30-second board time. Let's run you through some hot topics as we head to Unadilla and resume SuperMotocross World Championship this weekend. When we mentioned the playoffs, it's basically a month now, if you look at it by the calendar. 3 motocross races, a weekend off, and then we'll start at ZMAX Dragway outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And as predictable as this Jet Lawrence season has been, where he's winning every race, I think that might be what we're looking for now. A different type of track, a different type of format. We don't even know who's racing necessarily. That's what's going to make it wild to get a big change-up after motocross.
Yeah, I think there are more questions than answers for what we're going to see in this SMX playoffs. The tracks are going to be different. It's going to be a little bit of motocross, a little bit of supercross. We're going to speedway venues. There's just going to be a lot of change. And oh yeah, Jet Lawrence is going to be on a 450 inside an arena. Like, we're going to get that, a taste of that, maybe a little look forward to 2024 for the first time. So there's a lot to be excited about. And I think change is great. This whole new format, the points are going to get really crazy as the races escalate. So it's going to be a great weekend all around.
And as a hybrid between Supercross and Motocross, yes, these are man-made venues with seating if you go to Charlotte or Chicagoland Speedway or the LA Memorial Coliseum, but they want to give that motocross feel. So the first 2 races will actually have camping. I think that's the main thing. If you've been to the Atlanta Supercross or Daytona and you think that's the way the playoffs are going to look, a little bit, but no, this is going to be a lot different than what we've seen before.
Yeah, we had that interview with Mike Muley a month or so ago, and he really explained how they were going to integrate motocross in these tracks and raise the speeds and change the obstacles that these riders are going to face. So I think it is going to look like a completely different type of race than we've ever had before. So there's going to be a lot of learning from the riders. I think if they come in with preconceived notions, they're probably going to be wrong, and it's going to be great. It's going to be like nothing we've ever seen before.
And because the riders and teams want to learn this as well, we're going to have Friday practice. And I got to imagine, first of all, the fans are going to love to see this on Friday. But for the riders, JT, I don't even know if they know how to test. This Friday practice thing might be the first time they start to learn what this is going to look like.
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to. Like, you don't want to put yourself into a position where you're locked into settings, because that may be way off, and then you'd have to completely reassess. So I think coming in with an open mind, having a few different directions that you could go with the motorcycle is really going to be the best course of action. But it's going to be who's the most adaptable, who can figure out what works the best. And it's going to be a little bit of compromise for the riders on the motorcycle. You're not going to be able to go full supercross settings. You're certainly not going to be able to go full motocross settings. So it's who can find something that they're most comfortable with and figure it out quickly.
Yeah, we look forward to having the fans there. We haven't really had a Friday atmosphere or a day before the race atmosphere for a long, long time in the sport. So that'll be cool, because we've switched to a one-day format at most races, for about a dozen years now. Let's resume our 250 championship fight. I just want a refresher and a reminder. Let's go back to Haiden Deegan winning our last race at Washougal, and here's what he said on the podium.
Those last few laps, I'm putting my heart into this thing, baby. And man, it's nerve-wracking, and I'm sure it's nerve-wracking for Hunter too. He's supposed to be winning these things, and I'm glad I could put the American up front for all the fans.
Oh yeah, as far as I'm concerned, JT, those are words pointed directly at the Hunter Lawrence camp. The America thing, and also he should be nervous. He's the one that's supposed to be winning these races. Although you and I have talked about this pressure that he's maybe trying to apply. I don't know if that applies to Hunter Lawrence. Do you think that's going to change Hunter Lawrence's mentality at all? Deegan's trying.
Well, I don't think that Hunter necessarily loves those comments, but I also don't think that he's going to necessarily take the bait either, right? He's going to focus on what he needs to do. He's going to understand that through the first course of the season, he was the best rider. And Haiden had a very, very good day at Washougal. But now we're down to 3 races, and the points are so tight, it's really a 3-race shootout to see who's going to become champion of this. And I think if you offered Hunter Lawrence this opportunity, that it's really between you and Haiden Deegan and a 3-point gap for 3 rounds, would you take that? I think he takes that every single time. So I think if you frame it that way, he's in a very good position here.
Let me throw another one at you. We've seen a couple of aggressive riding situations where Deegan gets really defensive when he's trying to get past Supercross with his teammate Jordan Smith. And then with Hunter Lawrence at Colorado earlier in the year, those Yamahas get great starts. Starts are not really a strength of Hunter. At some point, I think he's going to have to pass Haiden. Will he start thinking about things then? Because we don't know with the rookie what he'll do.
I think you're going to see that aggression come out. He's been very selective with how he's dealt with Hunter in those spots. Thunder Valley in Colorado, as you mentioned, was the first time that I saw him employ some of those tactics that we know he has in his arsenal. So I think now with the championship the way it is, if Hunter has to make that pass or if they're battling whatsoever, I think you're going to see Haiden up the aggression. I think Haiden has gone from sort of the underling, the person that felt like he was learning from a guy like Hunter Lawrence, to now he is a direct competitor, and they're going to head. So I think all bets are off. I think you're going to see a much more aggressive and almost an instigator a little bit out of Haiden Deegan, and maybe try to get Hunter Lawrence off his game a bit.
Hey, while we had a break from our championship with 2 weekends off, some new news about new brands coming in. Triumph has been teasing a bike with our guy Ricky Carmichael for a while now, and they showed the frame of that new bike. But meanwhile, Beta, very quietly, has already been building their motocross arsenal. They already race in MXGP in Europe, but they have a works bike rule. We're kind of waiting to see what it would look like on a production rule side. They announced a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, that Benny Bloss will be on the team next year, and now Colt Nichols being added to the squad. So Nichols and Bloss, that's a pretty serious effort for Beta. And yes, they will enter Supercross for the first time starting next year.
Yeah, it was interesting. I knew that they were courting Colt Nichols for a while now, and he had a couple of other options. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, but I think this new opportunity, and I think what Colt's looking at is they can develop this bike and get it up to par and on the level of the other factory teams. This is a place he could call home for the foreseeable future. Instead of this bouncing around, maybe he's in a fill-in ride, something that doesn't have a long-term future. You build a base here and they, consider you their guy. He could be at Beta for the next 5 years or so, right? They could build their team around him, and that's a pretty attractive option.
And for those that don't know, Beta is a trials brand primarily, and then they moved into the off-road racing space like Enduro and GNCC and now into motocross. I did ask Nichols this morning, his Beta deal he carved out where he can still show up on that borrowed Kawasaki, race some motocross rounds to get SMX playoff points, and he will be a part of the playoffs still, and then he'll get on the Beta when he needs to for testing and for next season. So that's cool that we're not going to lose Nichols, because Bloss did not race motocross because he's fully focused on developing that bike for next year. I spent the week at Loretta Lynns. JT, you've been there a whole bunch as a racer. You know what the experience is all about. I'll give you some quick highlights. Folks that watch Supercross Futures and the Motocross Scouting Combines this year, remember Casey Cochran, Julian Beaumer, and Daxton Bennick have kind of been the outstanding riders in those events. Cochran starts the week out great, dominates his first 2 B-class motos, then he crashes and dislocates his shoulder, and then somehow salvages a 5th in another moto, and then wins his final moto to go 1-5-1 and still dig out a title. Beaumer had a great race in the dry, a bad race in the mud, and then when the track was at its worst muddy-wise, he had his best moto, but that second bad moto when it was semi-muddy, that ruined his title chances. Daxton Bennick did go 1-1-1 in a class. He wins the AMA Nicky Haiden Horizon Award. Fans probably remember him racing Redbud and a couple of others as a pro. He'll make his debut full-time at Unadilla. And through all that mud, Gavin Towers, who you might not have heard of yet, because I think he missed the Futures races this year coming back from a collarbone injury, he won the other pro sport class where Bennick had problems there. So watch out for Gavin Towers. I think might end up being on Star Racing along with Bennick. So those are the names to watch coming out of Loretta's and into the immediate future. Hey, you mentioned earlier in the show, we think Justin Barcia may be back here for Unadilla. We've had the watch on him going for quite some time.
Yeah, I think he's coming back. He was riding in Italy at the Gas intro a couple of weeks ago. And I think when you're watching someone who's able to go that pace and he wants to come back at his home race of Unadilla. So it just makes too much sense. And I'm hearing that he's riding pretty well. Now, the question is, a guy like Barcia, he loves to be the instigator. He loves to get in there and cause a little drama. I don't think it's always intentional. It's just who he is. Could you picture this, Barcia getting a hole shot and just him being the decider of whether Jet goes perfect or not, right? He has that capability. You give Justin Barcia a hole shot at his home race where Jet Lawrence is going in 16-0, and I think you just get fireworks. So just something to watch for there.
All right, we are off to upstate New York at Unadilla. A couple programming notes. If you're watching on Peacock or the SuperMotocross Video Pass outside of the U.S., everything's pretty similar to usual. Race Day Live presented by Motorsport.com at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we start racing at 1 o'clock. But please note, we will not have halftime break or a halftime show at this event. We're just going to go back to the 4 straight hours of motos. And the reason why is we want to fit into a live TV window we've gotten with the good folks at NBC. We'll have 2 straight hours of second moto coverage on television starting at 3.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.